Today we're rebuilding a DLTX 53 carburetor off of a 1936 John Deere A. So already gone through, took it off the tractor, cleaned it up, soaked it, cleaned out all the passages. I would say up until this point, the biggest thing is just assessing what you need. I went ahead and ordered a whole carb kit anyways, but I didn't need all of it. So I'll probably end up just putting all those parts back in except for my throttle shaft actually. But the biggest thing that I've noticed with these is these idle passages down here is that you can go ahead online. You can order them from Robert's Carburetor Repair, which I didn't order these from, but the ones on there are actually a lot better because they have a handle on them, I've heard. But these are just ordered from Drills and Cutters. You have number 40 6-inch drill bit and number 53 6-inch drill bit. Most of these passages, you look through them, and yes, you can like send a piece of wire through like this, or for the ones with the 53 passage, you can send all these through. But the big thing is that they're actually blocked off a lot more than you can tell, because this one here they call down through this hole is the secret passage, and that you have to take your 53 bit through. And mine, obviously, like I said, you could see light coming through there and you get everything through, but it's just like it was about half the size of what it should be. Other than that, so yeah, you have all these that some of them are obviously bigger, but you have one in here that's a 40, the other's 53. These are both 40s. That one's bigger, obviously, and then you got a 40 here. The idle, which comes down there, is 40. Going over to the load side, that's a 40. And then also for the load needle, it's a 40. But then on this side, I feel like I skipped over one, yeah, 53. These two in here, though, I found it better. I don't have one on me right now, but a 57 drill bit, we get those the best. I mean, obviously they're a little bit smaller ones there, and that's sometimes where I just go through with the wire and try to break up anything I can find. But yeah, so far I prepped it, cleaned it, painted it, and obviously sometimes like to paint them after I get it assembled, like the bowl on and all, but it works for this. And pressed in the new bushings already and got those seated, and make sure that the butterfly could seat in there all right and move freely. Other than that, I got a little overspray I'll clean off here, but everything else is in good condition. Stem's all right. Everything's open. So big thing is, you know, when you're all done, either clean it out with some solvent, or, which I already cleaned out with solvent, but I'm going to go ahead and blow air through all the passages again, just to make sure that nothing got in the way there. And then I'll go ahead and start assembling some of that. Set this aside and I go over to the bowl usually, and this is obviously all prepped, but the biggest thing with these, and test your float. Most of the time they're all right if your tractor was actually working, but I get some water, fuel, and I dunk it in there, make sure no bubbles come up or anything. And then when you actually get the bowl together, the biggest thing on this one, why I actually took it apart to start, was the needle and seat was bad, and I could have stopped at that, but I decided why not just rebuild it all, because might make a pulling tractor out of this one. So I got a needle and seat here, and open up out of the package. Let's see, throw this. So yeah, you have your needle, seat, and the gasket that goes in there. Biggest thing is measuring, once you actually get the float and the bearing and everything back in, is if your float needs to be 3/8 of an inch from the top of the bowl. So I'll assemble this real quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Go ahead and put this together. Threads go down into there, gasket on top. Did that just come loose? Maybe did. Okay, so it's just finger tight in there for now, but you go ahead and grab yourself a tape measure. Work better. There's an actual tool for this that John Deere used to use, but obviously that stuff's probably long gone and I have no clue where it is. Yeah, just go ahead and tip it. You won't be able to see very well, but I can. So yeah, now that that's all together, everything else can be done with the bowl on. Okay, so I got that baffle in. It takes a little bit more effort than it should to get something like that in. Sometimes what I usually end up doing is I freeze the baffle, heat this, and try to press it in. That didn't work so well this time, so I took some little wooden dowels and tried to just barely tap it in without bending it up too much. I don't know how much good it actually does to ever take those out because, well, it's just air going through there as a breather, but I do it. Maybe won't ever again. Who knows? So yeah, then next, I obviously have these two plugs here, which are these little brass plugs. That's the best thing about these kids, because every time somebody took these apart, you know, back when, all of it is just chewed up and stripped, and I don't know how it always happens, but it does. Okay, so everything below the bowl is in except for that tube that needs to go in. Biggest thing with these plugs is actually figuring out, because there's a few that are different sizes. Most of them are this size, but for there's these two that are different sizes. Slightly bigger one goes in right there, and then that one goes in on the other side of that idle circuit, going through where the economizer tube runs through. Okay, now time to put the economizer in, or not the economizer, the emulsion tube. That just seats up in there. Should be able to just drop it right in. If it doesn't quite line up, give it a shake. So it needs to end up going through the hole up there, which this one's open, so just gotta line it up a little bit. There. Here, it's hit solid on there, so it's in. Okay, so put that throttle shaft in to test it. I just did a little stuff off camera there, and that felt seal. You gotta put everything else on before putting that bowl back on. I did off camera leak test to see it works. Now this little plug's gotta go right in the bottom down here. Should all be clean. Kind of difficult to get some of these in sometimes. Okay, so plugs in, or whatever you want to call it. Now go ahead and run through and put all the other plugs in. Okay, so all the brass plugs are in all around. Probably go ahead and put the bowl on, honestly, because none of this should be in the way for anything else. So with that, you have your bolt that needs to go in on the bottom. Always make sure you put that in first, because otherwise you aren't ever going to get that in. If you didn't see, I had the emulsion tube in already. See that pressed up, whoops, on the inside there. So bolt in, make sure that the side where the fuel comes in is facing the idle side of the carburetor. And then make sure you got your gasket in there. And then, there it is. The spring goes in, so it pushes up against that emulsion gasket. And then brass nut. Make sure that bowl's somewhat straight on the carb. Doesn't matter too much. I think that looks about good there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just snug it just a little bit more for now. There. Okay, so got this butterfly in now. Fits all right. Obviously got to put the spring back in there yet, or the stop. But just gonna go ahead and off camera. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. If you buy a kit, obviously it comes with some instructions. Here's the final product. Everything in. Good rebuild. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. One is 1.5 turn and one is like 1 3/4 turn or something like that. I'll have to check for which is what. If you have any questions, you can ask her. That one's pretty easy to find that information on tuning the carb, or just figuring it out by listening. It's one of the best ways to do it. Run it, open it up, or close it till it starts to falter, and then open it up until it idles right. Because like for me, what I usually have it at is I like it as lean as possible. That's what I try to go for, so it doesn't foul out any plugs. But yep, that's basics of it.